Okay, so welcome back to my channel. This is going to be a recap of Greenleaf Season 3, Episode 3, Chain of Command. Okay, so it's on the heels of Mae's blow up with Gigi and her decree that after all the tax situation is done, that she's going to divorce James. So they're sitting down, Mae, Gigi, and Sophia, they're sitting down for breakfast, and you know, this awkward silence, and Sophia's just sitting looking like, okay. And so she kind of broke the silence, talking about the weather, you know, some innocuous something. And her mom, and she's like, oh, it's just nice. It's nice out today. And Mae was like, it sure is. And Gigi was like, yeah, I guess all things are washed clean. So of course Mae made a little face. And Sophia was like, okay, so I'm going to head out and just do me, and I'm gonna leave you guys here to sort this out. And so as Sophia was walking out, Marisol, one of the housekeepers, walked in with a delivery for Mae. And so she opened it. It was the dissolution of marriage, divorce papers, basically. And so, you know, based on her facial expression, Gigi could tell it was something serious. And so she said, well, what's wrong? What is it? Even in the midst of her shit, oh my God, she just can't help but be a bitch. So she goes, you had some nerve. After the way you spoke to me, if we weren't related, you wouldn't even be living in this house. And she got up and stormed off. I'm like, Mae, girl. Okay, so Pastor just crushed Charity's little feelings. So he's just arriving at the church, and it almost looked like he was sneaking in. And so he bumped into somebody, and she asked her, you know, have you seen the First Lady? And she's like, oh, no, I haven't. Do you want me to let her know that you're looking for her if I see her? He's like, oh, no, she'll find me soon enough. And so she was like, God is good. He's like, yeah. So he gets his office, and Karine says, there's somebody waiting for you inside, or something to that effect. And said, it's Charity. He was like, oh, it's the First Lady? She was like, no, Charity. He's like, what does she want? So she was like, I tried to tell her to wait and I'll call you, but she just, cause you know, she decided to wait inside. So he goes in, and Charity, she wanted to talk to him about preaching. And so he's like, okay. So he said, you're a singer. We've been through this before. You're a singer, not a preacher. And he was like, well, how would you even know? You haven't heard me preach in years. He said, well, that's true enough. And so she decided, I guess she thought she was going to be deep and philosophize. It was like, well, why do we have religion, or why do we believe in Jesus? She made some comment. It's because he's a song for the soul. And I mean, she had a little speech together, and he said, did I ever tell you about the time I wanted to be a baker? She's, no, Dad, you never told me that. He said, I had dreams of being a baker, but then I decided to be a pastor. He said, well, Dad, you never told me that. He was like, that's because it never happened. He said, Pat, being a preacher is a calling. It's not someone's plan B. And she, you know, got upset and walked away. You know, she was hurt. But I mean, it's true. But at the same time, we know we got a bunch of charlatans in the pulpit. So, I mean, church is a business. So, okay. Lord Zora's ass and turned into a freaking klepto. Okay, so, so we're over at Triumph now. Tasha Skanks walks into Jacob's office, and she said, you know, I just want to let you know that we've noticed that a lot of the offering envelopes have been torn open. And, you know, the money is missing. And, you know, I was, you know, I didn't want to initially bring it to your attention, but I actually think that we might have a thief in our midst. Oof, okay, so you've been stealing so much, you've been ripping envelopes open and stealing the daggone money out of the envelope, Zora. Girl, so he basically said he wanted to call a meeting for, with all the ushers, and he basically told Tasha not to make a big deal out of it. Just make it seem like it's just going to be just a normal meeting. Bishop was preemptive, so he had her served. And so she went, that's why she sped off, Mae sped off in that morning. She went to go see an attorney. And she just basically said, you know, my husband had me served with divorce papers, and I want to know my my options. And she said, well, what's his reason? May was like, he slept with my sister several times and now he's seeing a woman half his age. Now notice she didn't mention her indiscretion. But how could she? I mean, she's perfect in her mind and justified. But anywho, she didn't mention her little indiscretion. And so she said, oh, well, you've given me more than enough to work with. And so she asked her, are you a Christian? She said no. But when this is all said and done, you're gonna be glad that I'm not. So Miss Thing fights dirty. So she said that I've represented a lot of first ladies. I've represented a lot of first ladies, and they all want one thing. And she said, what do you mean? She said, it doesn't matter how many times you smiled at, the elderly and, shook hands with the infirm and all. She went to this whole speech. The thing is, once a bishop is done with you, it's Cinderella time. She's like, what the hell do you mean? She said, the party's over. So basically, once they're done with you, they're done. And so Mae is now sitting there like, okay, but you did strike the first blow. I mean, he followed through, but maybe her mouth and bit off more than she could chew. I don't think that she ever, based on her reaction, she never expected him to file. She never expected him to be the first one to file. So, wow. After the meeting with the attorney, Mae went to, I guess, a local bar. First, I thought she went to Mavis Bar, but I can't remember the actor's name. My God, he's been in so many things. He's been in Striptease, the black guy, and he was in South Central. He's been in so many things. And he was the bartender, and so she asked for some drink he had never heard of, and so she actually told him how to make it. It was all good. And there's actually they had a lady up there singing who was singing her ass off. And so she decided to sit down, and I guess while he was making her drink. And Charity, she's still kind of, she just don't know what to do with herself. And so she ends up calling Jabari. And as I suspected, and I think most people suspected, that he's opportunistic. I'm not saying that Charity isn't a handful, but she called him and just to, I guess, get caught up and just to have somebody to talk, to vent to. And he initially was like, hey, Charity, what's up? I guess he was expecting her to say, oh, I'm coming back. But I guess, when she started talking about, oh, it's Kevin and, my parents, and he basically just cut her off and was like, you know what, I gotta go. And he hung up on her again. And then you see him cozying up to some young, naive child, tee-heeing and kiki-ing. So I'm like, okay, well, Charity's been replaced. So I'm just, and after that, Gigi called Darius, and he she called him? Well, he called her, and he apologized for calling her a hypocrite. So I guess they hadn't spoken since that she left that night. And she started telling him about, my father served my mother with divorce papers early this morning. And Darius like, what was he thinking? She's like, I have no idea. He's like, well, we can talk about it later on tonight. We'll see how much talking they get to. Bishop goes over to Triumph, of all places, and to talk to Jacob. And you could tell, like, he's just, I think at this point he's concerned. You could tell, when Karine, because at one point Karine had gone into his office, I guess because he had been, he'd been in there and nobody had heard a peep from him, and she went in to check on him, and you could see he was distracted and looked concerned and worried. And so he went over to Jacob and he asked if he had heard from his mother, and he's like, well, no, what's going on? And he started telling him the story about how he first proposed to their mom and how she initially told him no, that she had other plans. And so in order to prove to her, he made all these gestures basically in order to prove to her that he was serious about wanting a life with her. And he's saying, as well as I do, your mother's the same person that she is. Same person today as she was back then. And so he's like, I think I may have basically gone too far. And so Jacob was like, what is going on? What did you do? And so tears running down his face. The bishop was I filed for divorce. So Bishop, of course, Jacob was like, you did what? What? Like, so now Gigi knows. Jacob now knows. And as usual, Charity is always the last to know. But she doesn't know that she's the last to know at this point. So it's just, I think that he is, you can kind of tell that he felt like he had gone too far. Charity looked like she's on the verge of a nervous breakdown. She went to Kevin's place to pick up the baby, and Aaron was there. And so, of course, that caught her off guard. It's like, oh, okay, hey, what's up? And he was like, oh, you were early. We weren't expecting you until around 5. And she was like, oh, well, basically, I just had time to come over, so I just came to pick him up. And so he's like, yeah, can you wait for a minute? Because Kevin, he ran to the store, and he should be back in a few minutes, and he needs to talk to you. And actually, we both needed to talk to you. And so the baby was playing with this little giraffe thing, a little giraffe toy. And she was holding like, wow, what's going on? And she saw that he was playing with the toy. And she's like, oh. And then when she realized that Aaron had given it to him, she gave the toy back to Aaron. It was like, oh, well, we'll just leave this here as something he can play with when he's here. Can you get the diaper bag for me? And she's like, well, can you just wait? We really want to talk. She's like, why? What are you guys moving in together? And then by the look on his face, she was like, you could tell that was what they wanted to talk about. He said he was in town. I guess he had an interview at a firm or something, and he got the job, and so he's going to be there permanently now. And so she was like, oh, okay, so can you grab the bag for me? And he went to get the bag, and you could see the tears were building up in her eyes. Now, I don't think that was because she wanted to get back with Kevin. I think, that ship has sailed. I just think her life is not what she thought it would be. You know what I'm saying? She went from being a happily married woman with a child and with twins on the way, and then she ends up, because of all the stress, ends up losing one of the babies, and then her husband disappears, and then he comes back, and then he has the attorney that they hired to represent them in this suit that a former employee filed against them. They win the case, and he just happens to be the son of a close friend, a family friend. And then she finds out that him and Kevin are shacked up. And she thought she was going to have this relationship with Jabari, and then she's starting to realize that no, that's not going to happen. And her life is she's like a tumbleweed right now, just blowing in the wind, and she's just all over the place right now. Mae is still on Beale Street, which I remember fondly. I actually lived in Memphis for about 7 years, and I, went there a time or two. It's, if you're not familiar with it, it's a long strip of bars and restaurants and good music and good food, and it's the whole thing. So she's in, I think that's where she is. And so the guy, the bartender Vernon, I guess he's perfected her drink, and so she's just knocking him back. He just brought her a new drink, and she's just sitting there listening to the music, just going. Like you find yourself in a situation, and then you kind of have to contemplate, like, how in the world did I end up here? Like, her and Charity are going through it right now. So Jacob is talking to Kerissa. They're setting the table for dinner, and he was still shocked. Like, I can't believe that you would serve your wife of 44 years with divorce papers just to scare her. And apparently he had spoken to her, and she let him know that things are all fine and God was going to work it out and that whole jazz. And so they sit down to dinner, and they asked the kids about what they'd done today. And the little boy, he's a cute self, he talked about what he did. And then he's like, well, what about you, Z? I'm so sick of her ass. I want them to just grow her ass up and slap the shit out of her. So she sits there. Well, I did homework all day with a pen. Can I go now? She said, can I have my computer back? And he said, we gave you back your TV. She said, well, I'm done. Can I go now? And so Kerissa said, take your plates to the sink. And so her and her brother got up. Take dishes to the sink. And he started talking to her about the missing money. And she said, basically, who do you think it was? And he basically was like, Zora. She was like, just because she's having a difficult time right now doesn't mean she's a thief. He was like, she's the only new usher something popped on my computer. She's the only new usher that's been added, and basically saying that since before she was added to the roster, we never had this problem. And so Kerissa was basically like, you know what? Just because she's having a problem doesn't make her a thief. And then she got up and walked away. And so Jacob now is like, I mean, I don't know. We know that she's a thief, and I think Jacob deep down knows that she's a thief. But Kerissa, for some reason, is just, I don't know why she's being so patient with Zora. If that was my mother would have slapped the shit out of me, the taste out of my mouth. So Mae ends up calling home. Sophia answers the phone, and she apologized because they were supposed to have dinner together. And she just basically let her know that she wouldn't be home tonight, that she's fine, everything's all good, that she's not, but she won't be home until tomorrow. And she ended up being going to a little motel across the way from the bar. At least, I mean, she had enough sense not to get behind the wheel because she could barely walk. And so she, got her room, stumbled to her room, and she kind of looked around, and which was depressing because that room, good lord. And she slept on those sheets. I get not my damn Mae. Slept on the Roach Motel sheets. They had that old big TV. Okay. Anywho, so she she collapsed in the bed, and there's where she was, and there's where she stayed. And so Gigi and Darius are out. Sophia called her because she was concerned. And, she got off the phone with her. Darius like, well, what's going on now? She's like, well, Mom called, said she wasn't going to be home. And she was like, are you going to call her? He's like, no, she grown. She's like, she's not going to want to hear from me anyway. And she wouldn't. Gigi called her. She was sending she right to voicemail. Probably turned her phone off. But she's like, she grown. I can't deal with that. And she said, she did talk about, she's like, I think Rochelle is at the root of it. Girl, they've been having problems long before Rochelle was even born. So it's a lot of things. Yeah, Rochelle may have contributed to it in her own way, but you can't lay it solely at the foot of Rochelle. I understand you want to find somebody to blame, but your parents did a perfectly good job all on their own effing up their marriage. Okay. He said that, and so Darius was like, he said, how when you sit down, she was talking to Darius, how you interview somebody and you have a feeling they're lying to you? He said, yeah. He was like, I have a friend at the police department who could look into it. And she was like, okay. I'm hoping that Rochelle Cross, we gonna find out that she running some little Ponzi scheme, and that's why she got, that's why it's only the people that are getting paid by using her service are obviously the ones that singing her praise. So I hope we don't find out that she robbing Peter to pay Paul and she's just one big scam. Charity is out here looking crazy in these streets. Okay, so she picked up the baby from Kevin's. And remember that conversation they had about how he didn't want her, he wasn't giving her permission to take the child out of state. So she went and jumped in her little car. Drove on down the road, just a little 7 hours, so that she can meet up with Jabari. So Jabari's in the middle of a rehearsal. I guess they have a show going on, and so they're at the venue rehearsing with the person who was supposed to fill in for her, but when she decided that she wasn't going to go back, they kept her, the little young tenderoni. So she shows up, and she got the little baby in the little stroller, and at first, she was standing there and listening to the girl sing, and she could blow now. The girl got some pipes, but and so she's standing there. She's kind of seeing him and how he's interacting with her. Then he looks out and he eventually sees her, and so he tells him to hold on for a minute, and he goes out to talk to her. And he's like, well, "What are you doing here?" She said, "Oh, well, I came back," and he said, So I just I wanted to see you." He said, "You drove 7 hours with the baby?" She's like, "Well, yeah." He said, "Oh, I thought that you couldn't." I thought Kevin told you couldn't take it, but he said something like that. But, so she said that, is she my replacement? He was like, yeah. He said, well, I'm back now, so you won't need her anymore. And so she said, he said, she said, we'll just come with you. He's like, no, I'm busy. I'm still busy. And he said, well, she was like, okay, I don't understand. Why don't you just break up with me? He was like, because I didn't know at the time I wanted to. But now I'm sure now. Go home. She said, well, they don't want, and then she's like, well, they don't want me home. He said, well, I don't want you here. And so now she's standing there. Charity. Girl, Charity. And so now you end up with alienation. You drove 7 hours off of this man to tell you to fuck off. And then you have to deal with Kevin once he finds out that you took the baby out of state. Wow, girl. Tasha and Rochelle meets up at a little bar, and they're talking about their little coup they're trying to pull over. They're trying to stage against the Greenleafs. And Tasha is starting to feel guilty. And she said, don't you ever feel, she said, you got everything that you wanted. Which I'm not sure. I mean, she really didn't have a big role to play in the Greenleafs breaking up. And I don't know if she think that her and Grace are cool. I guess. I mean, I don't know what at this point what she means. Well, you got what you wanted. And she said, well, why do you need to do this? She said, did you have to get them to reopen the tax situation? So that's why they got the $2 million bill in the mail. And so she said, oh, don't you, Tasha's like, don't you ever worry about your soul? And she said, Rochelle was like, my soul? The Greenleafs have been around here for 2 generations. If you include that high yellow Grace, 3, making a mockery of God. He said, Bishop killed my father in that church that he burned down for an insurance money, for a check. She was like, and I need to know, whose side are you on? So you can look at Tasha. Tasha looked like she might be a little scared of Rochelle. He's like, it wasn't just Basie's father that died in their church, it was mine too. So I need to know whose side are you on, because I can't deal with no backsliders. And Tasha's like, no, I'm with you. I'm on your side. So Darius walks into Gigi's office, and actually no, let me go back. So it's the morning, and Mae, she leaves her Roach Motel. I guess she's headed on to where she's headed on. I know she's gonna stop at Calvary first, or she's gonna head home and shower, which I hope she does before they have their showdown. And Bishop, he's already at work, and you can see he's in his office scared to death because he don't know what her next move is going to be, because he hasn't spoken to her since he served her the papers, or maybe since before he served her the papers. And so Darius walks into Gigi's office, and she was like, I thought you don't go to church. And so she's like, oh, you found something out about Rochelle? And he was like, oh, she checks out. But I did find out that, you know, all of these mega churches had a contact in the in the IRS, and the person was cutting a lot of deals with these churches. And so basically he's basically a lot of these churches are under investigation. Now I don't know, because Gigi never knew about the tax bill, so I don't know if he's telling her old news, something that's already been resolved, or when Tasha said, why did you have to have them, why did you reopen the tax case if this is something new that's about to hit them? So yeah, so Gigi's like, well, when he told her that she came up clean, she was like, it can't be, there has to be something. And I'm like, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of things, but you know, as the season progresses, I'm sure things are going to, you know, those skeletons are going to come tumbling out of her closet. Okay, so Jacob had a meeting with all the ushers, the young girls, and he basically let them know that, you know, he was, you know, proud of them, and that, you know, their good work doesn't go unnoticed. And he's basically like, I noticed everything. And, you know, they all said amen, and Zora was standing there for a minute. She was like, amen. And so he get home later that day, and Kerissa's there. She's on the phone, and he comes in pissed, right? So he's like, where's Zora? She was like, I have to call you back. So she's like, what, Jacob, what is going on? She stole that money. So he went to go to her room, and she had the door locked. So he banging on the door. She eventually comes to the door. He said, you stole that money. Where's the money? She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. And so he starts tearing her room up. Stop going through my stuff. And Kerissa's like, Jacob, you know, don't do that. You know, so she's like trying to stop him. And then eventually he finds the money. And he is so pissed. He's just like lost words. He snatched the money up and just like, you lied to me. And he walked out. And then she turns to look at Kerissa. And Kerissa's just sitting there just scared, she's confused, she's hurt, she's angry. Like, she just doesn't know what to do with Zora anymore. And obviously she doesn't want Jacob to do something he's going to regret or say something that he's going to regret. But at the same time, Zora is like pushing them to the brink. Like, really. Boy, this show be taking you there and back and hither and everywhere. Oh my goodness. Okay, so Mae eventually arrives at the church and she's talking to Karine. I guess he basically was telling her that she's going to be gone for a while and told her the dates. He said, well, where are you going? She said, Atlanta. Is Lionel? What's his name? Is that his name? Lionel? Is he in Atlanta? Anywho, so she goes into the office and he, you know, he's very apologetic and, you know, it was stupid and petulant and I'm sorry and, you know, I love you, da 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 da. And she basically, you know, said that, you know, it has to be over. You know, I married you when I knew good and well that there is something, I had a calling to do something else, anything else. And so she basically handed him the divorce papers and said that my attorney made notes in the margins. And she's like, I have to go. Like, it's been time. It's long overdue. I have to go. And, you know, they had that one last look at each other and she walked out. And that's how the episode ended. Okay, that's some bullshit. I'm just like, what the hell? Like, we're only 3 episodes in, and it's like already, it's a whole lot. It's a lot. But obviously, I'm going to keep watching, and I'll talk to you guys in the next episode.